Welcome, 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 my lovely brothers and sisters. Welcome to a new live book reading this day. As the title is saying, we have to question the technology agendas. All these agendas are not for our benefit at all. I do a compilation of several topics of this book of Wes Penry's Synthetic Superintelligence and the Transmutation of Humankind. He speaks about the singularity. He takes it under a loop, and he is discussing this topic through several angles. So let us start with the first topic, which is titled The Nazis and AI. As mentioned earlier in this prologue, 2015, almost in Dutch, was the year of AI exposure of great magnitude in the mainstream media. This Kurzweil, who wrote some books about it, his books have been out for decades now, but the general public hasn't paid too much attention to them. No, because the general public is so caught up and busy with all side things, and instead of with far more important things than what is being fired upon them, and make them believe that is important. So the general public hasn't paid too much attention to them being one thing, too many to deal with. TV reality shows have been more important for most people than learning about what the controllers have planned for us. Hence, the population has had little knowledge about what is really coming down the pike, although it has been revealed to us for many, many, many years in one form or another. Of course, Kurzweil and his alike knew this. They are planning without having us interfering. There's nothing asked about. Let it put this way. The overlords never ask our opinion. Why? Because they know that we will not participate in it. So they have invented all sorts of ways to make us compliant to their agendas. So they don't care about our opinion at all, by the way. We are nothing more than just walking, living batteries for them who they can suck dry from life force energy. However, not until this year has the media got a go ahead by those in charge to expose the plans in public on internet sites such as CNN, ABC, NBC, and other channels with a large number of international viewers. Online newspapers around the world are also bringing this up on a large scale, as we shall see. Also, most of us have noticed that there is a huge increase in Hollywood movies on this theme. None of this is, of course, by chance, and they are eager to prepare us for the future. They do not want any shock reactions. So, Hollywood is in actuality programmed to bring all the agendas, and they started already mid 60s with yeah programming the masses already with all these technological agendas. And so each movie from that time on has some topic in it that is related to the singularity. So they are preparing us for a long time. And I think that the biggest movie so far in everything is the Matrix trilogy series. That was complete. That was so brilliant, and in that trilogy, they indeed have exposed to us what singularity means, what the metaverse means. Another movie that also shows a lot of in-depth information is the movie Avatar. Um, so they are eager to prepare us for the future. They do not want any shock reactions. They want the people blindly follow them and then softly go into their slaughterhouse. But I want to introduce this successfully. After all, the plan is to have most of the machine kingdom established by 2045. Yesterday, Spirit told me that in actuality, the world is already pulled into the frequency band that is the same as the frequency band of the machine kingdom in the astral realm. Spirit told me that humanity is now terraforming this world, this planet, into the same image of the machine kingdom present in the astral realm. And know that the machine kingdom in the astral realm is the lowest of the lowest of the lowest frequency band in the astral realm. So this means you in actuality can say almost 2D frequency band. Yeah, that is on which the machine kingdom in the astral realm is operating on. And humanity is now terraforming this planet in the same image of the machine kingdom in the astral realm. So this is something very important that Spirit told me. We really need to see what we are doing in what we are terraforming this planet Earth. Yeah. And so this means that a lot of people, their mind already is so far and so deeply sucked into the minds of, and thus the sick dream of the overlords, whom are in the astral realm. They are in the mid section of the astral realm. They're not in the higher section because they already um, have been so degenerated that they cannot operate in the higher realms. So they only operate from the midsection to the lower section. So the overlords themselves are operating from the midsection and more downwards to the lower sections. So um, this is a very important piece of information that Spirit told me. People who are young today will still be alive when the time comes. So Kurzweil makes a good case when he says that this goal is attainable. Those who will not live to see the singularity might have children and grandchildren who will experience this upcoming event. So finally, those who do not have any children and therefore think this does not apply to them are completely incorrect and foolish thinking. Much of it is happening right now before our eyes, and the majority of people do not notice. This is how powerful the propaganda is, and it works in at least two ways. It manipulate it manipulates us into accepting the singularity by making it interesting and exciting, and it shows us the agenda in plain sight. So we cannot say we weren't told beforehand. Some might wonder how the ones in control know so much about us and how we think, but it is actually quite obvious if we know our history. The intense research into the human mind began on a large scale during the Second World War, when Nazi scientists such as Mengele looked into the human psyche and the human brain on deeper levels. These criminal scientists experimented on twins, war prisoners, Jews, gypsies, and others. For them, unwanted minorities, and the experiments were often unimaginably cruel. They started compartmentalizing the brain by using trauma based mind control. They could then program these traumatized parts of the brain with new personalities that could be triggered by words, certain hand signals, a phone call, or otherwise. So, this research was then brought to America after the war in something called Project Paperclip. Nazi scientists were smuggled to the US to start working for what was later become the CIA, NSA, FBI, and NASA, and other key organizations within and above US government levels. The experiments on the human brain and mind then became known in the US as MK Ultra. MK stands for Mind Kontrolle, where Kontrolle is the German word for control. The CIA cryptonym MK probably originates from the joint efforts between the US and Germany to create a totally mind controlled, easy to manage population. However, this is not the only reason they started researching the depth of the brain and the mind. It had everything to do with artificial intelligence and the singularity. So, during the times of the Second World War, they were already being busy with this agenda singularity. And to be more precise, this singularity agenda is already ancient old and was about to be fulfilled in the Atlantis era. So we are literally in a repeat of the Atlantis history. And this time, the overlords hope that they now finally can succeed this agenda. I want to make it totally clear what people call the New World Order and the One World Government is nothing but the singularity. That is it. I.e., the goal to create a super brain that will control all other brains and minds on this planet. So even the brains of your animals and all wildlife is part of this. Yeah? Other branches of MK Ultra were later established, such as the infamous Project Monarch and more. All these branches of mind control had one thing in common, which was to learn everything about the human brain and mind in order to later create the super brain computer, SBC, which is a term for a super controlled collective consciousness. Yeah. The astute reader might now wonder why the overlords would need to study the human brain when, after all, they were the ones who manipulated our DNA. The overlords have deliberately closed the other 10 strands of our DNA. On top of that, they have placed a double lock on us through the helix. So the double helix is in actuality a double lock that keeps us bound to the frequency fence that is all around this planet. So this whole double helix comes now into a different understanding. They were the ones who manipulated our DNA in first place. Wouldn't they already know how it works? Oh yes, they knew how the human brain worked when they created it millennia ago. But human consciousness constantly changes the neural pathways in the brain by creating new neural pathways as we learn new things. And the pathways in the brain get rearranged into new patterns to adapt to new versions of reality. So, for the overlords, it is not just a matter of cloning the human brain, it is also to be compatible with the human soul. So, the way the soul is interacting with the brain is in present time, not in some distant past. So, the mass consciousness is not vibrating within the exact same frequency band as it did when Homo sapiens were first created. Nevertheless, the complete cloning of the brain, I suspect, was achieved already decades ago. The only job left is to convince the majority of mankind that what is to come is, between quotation marks, good for us. That's what the overlords are telling us. That's the package. This is where puppets such as Kurzweil come into the picture. Kurzweil sees himself as a so-called visionary. Well, better said, the overlords just planted in his brain this whole singularity idea. Nothing is of Kurzweil himself. He was, so to say, chosen by the overlords due to his DNA. So he is part of the uncertain bloodline that is interesting to be used by the overlords. So other ways in which we have been tricked are the internet and other electronic devices such as, between quotation marks, smartphones, iPhones, plasma TVs, which all have devices embedded in them so that certain organizations can spy on the viewer even when the device is off. TV, in fact, was a forerunner to the computer and the internet. The latter agencies and the overlords wanted to observe human behavior and which choices we are most likely to make in any given situation. The motto was, one TV in every home. That turned into a similar motto a few decades later. The goal is at least one PC in every home. Then the internet came down upon us. Most people think this was an enormous achievement. So much more could be studied and learned so much quicker. So the administrators and the AIF, the Alien Invader Force, or better known as Archontic Invader Force, do not care what you put out on the internet or what you learn from there, as long as you do not step on the toes of their most current secret programs that they do not want to be exposed for any given reason. As long as you do not do that, you are relatively safe to say whatever you want on the net without any serious retribution. After all, the internet is there to study human behavior in present time and to monitor and store all data we so voluntarily put out on the net. The internet was released as the World Wide Web from having been a military network. Before it was implemented for the public, virtually everything is tested in the military before we get to see it. So this also is counting for the so-called smartphone iPhone. Yeah, they are military machines, and I know that they can kill other persons through that thing without you consciously seeing and knowing it. I know this from targeted individuals. The internet is on a grander scale an attempt to understand human unpredictability and to determine how to get people on the same page. I would imagine that the controllers have asked themselves, how much do the humans know? How much do they care about important issues, and how much do they care about trivial things? How social are they? How alike are they in all their uniqueness? The AIF, the Archontic Invader Force, wants these questions answered. Some of these beings are quite psychic and can read the mass consciousness without machines, but the internet was still important because they wanted to see how easily we are distracted from a focus point. The fact that humans are easily distracted becomes embarrassingly apparent in the different discussion forums where someone starts a topic of relevance and others comment on it. By so-called trolling, the letter agencies then make comments on the forum thread that have nothing to do with the original subject. And almost immediately, people's attention goes from the focal point to the distraction. Thus, the discussion of the original topic is completely lost. This is specifically true when the troll begins to insult one or more people responding to a threat. People become easily reactive and divert from the topic in order to defend themselves. Others then fill in to defend the person who is attacked. Those in charge must have learned much about us from the internet over the years. We are telling the entire world about ourselves and our intimate thoughts on Facebook, Twitter, Google, plus in other social media and on personal websites and blogs. The controllers couldn't be more pleased. We are helping them to create our own destruction as a human species by falling right into their hands. So we cannot finger point to anyone but ourselves for the total disaster that is now being rolled out over the world. The so-called smartphones and so-called iPhones are even worse than computers. At least people know that they are exposing themselves on the internet, but many who use smartphones think that it is relatively private when it's anything but. Just as with the internet, every keystroke is traceable. Every single thing, even your keyboard for your computer, is traceable because when you type a letter, that is a code. So they can exactly know what you're typing. And also through your so-called phone. As if this wasn't enough, people are bringing their smartphones with them wherever they go, text from them continuously, and browse the highly monitored internet. Landlines have become almost obsolete, and when did you see a phone booth last? All the phone booths are almost gone. Now the agencies can collect information on almost every 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Wi Fi makes it possible to spy on people through the phone even when it is turned off. And people who think that they can take out the battery and the SIM card and roll it in tin foil, it doesn't matter anymore. They can already track and trace you because we all have already so much nanobots in our bloodstream. We already have biosensors in our biofield, also known as aura, so they can track and trace you without you having a bank card or a phone with you. Doesn't matter anymore. So to spy on people through the phone even when it is turned off. So this George Orwell's classic book 1984 is since long surpassed in many ways. We do not have big cameras set up by the government in our houses and apartments, but instead we have much more sophisticated surveillance systems via the internet and these so-called smart products. Even the so-called smart meter is in actuality created to spy on us. Also, the fiber cable internet that is also there to spy on us. So now they want to have everything, the entire internet through bulbs. So that is why they have created specific light bulbs now. LED light is already loaded with nanobots through which they can track and trace you also. Um, so I wrote about smart cities in the West Benry papers, another thing that mainstream media began to discuss in the open after the papers were released. But why do you think they named them smart cities if smart stands for control and surveillance? You have the answer right there. They are cities where surveillance of their citizens is going on day and night. We are almost there already. Via satellites, and any person walking down the street, even in the big cities, can be zoomed in on. And Big Brother will know exactly where you are going, with whom you are talking, and what you are doing is a piece of cake. The entire sky is completely polluted with nanobots, and I also know that there are persons in this world who already have seen microchips in the sky with small cameras and microphones on it. The entire sky, all the soil, everything is poisoned with nanobots. So these are coming in the air, and through these nanobots are constantly bringing report out to the satellites, and so the satellites get all the data from the nanobots in the sky and in the soil. Yeah, and the chemtrailing is nothing more than what people think, because it's already more than just chemtrailing. we need to ask questions about everything. Yeah, we have allowed to poison this world because of our lack to inform ourselves and to educate ourselves. So every time when it rains, a new, um, uh, you can say, every time when it rains, all the nanobots come down onto the soil. So growing your own food, you need to ask questions if that is of any use, if your food gets poisoned with a load of nanobots, which you then eat. And so you get the nanobots in your body, and these nanobots are communicating with the satellites. So now you get to understand why there are so many people suffering Alzheimer's, autism, ADD, ADHD, why there is this skyrocketing expansion of cancer. Yeah. Um, we are killing ourselves. It is unbelievable what is going on in this world, and we have allowed all this to happen again because of our lack to inform and educate ourselves. We are at a very important crossing point in our history. And because of all these nanobots that we get in our bodies through the rain, through the soil, through our food, through the tap water, through every single thing that we drink, and also through our clothing, um, we in actuality already are allowing to become cyborgs from the inside out. And this is something we need to realize. Do we want to become a cyborg? Well, I don't. And I think and I hope truly many do not want this either. So we need to wake up as human soul group and start informing ourselves and questioning all these technological agendas. It is obvious to me that the overlords, who are the equivalent to the old Sumerian gods, are already here in great, great, great numbers. I also believe that Lord Enki is back already as well. And of course, his so called son Marduk, who has claimed itself to be the Lord of this world, has been here for centuries after he supposedly had left the planet for a while before then. It is soon time for Enki to regain his leading position here on Earth. But the question is whether Marduk will let him. More about this later. What the AIF is waiting for is the singularity, i.e., when the biological human body is fully integrated with the machine and the super brain computer is in an operating mode. CERN in Switzerland is playing a very important role in accomplishing this goal, as we will discuss further in this book. And I go now to some other topic known as vaccinations, chemtrails, and nanobots. So let us discuss this. It's a short piece. Yay! Ja, dank u wel. All right, so vaccinations, chemtrails, and nanobots. Vaccination program started to be rolled out in the end of the 1800s. But in actuality, the overlords were already experimenting with vaccinations long before that time. But since the end of the 1800s, begin 1900s, they started to demand to their proxies and minions here on Earth that this needed to be a governmental program. Vaccinations, my lovely sisters and brothers, always has been one of the tools to bring the human soul and human soul group into the singularity. Vaccinations were never, never, never created to give us better health. Never. And this is why they also started to raise up the amount of vaccinations for children. And also, we see now that they are demanding that even babies get vaccinated. Why? The sooner their natural immune system is being taken over by nanobots in their bodies, in their tiny, tiny bodies, the earlier they can be connected to the machine kingdom. That is the main reason behind all the vaccination program. And the same for animals. Do not vaccinate your animal because you are lining it up directly into the singularity. So never, ever fall prey for this bullshit vaccination program. It's all deliberately created, again, to bring all life forms into the singularity. The same with the so-called animal chip. This chip is connected with satellites. I have experienced, and not only I, many people, how animals are being controlled through this chip. Their behavior, they all of a sudden get weird diseases. This is because they can attack the animal from the inside out and cause all sorts of diseases in the animal body. And on top of that, the food industry for animals is also as disgusting as the human food industry is. We are allowing, as human soul group, to kill off the entire living library that we are living on, known as planet Earth. Each animal, tree and flower, sky, water, rock, doesn't matter what it is, contains information. We are deliberately killing the entire living library. We are deliberately saying we do not want to evolve anymore as human species. We started to see the world that we live in, that is in actuality our home planet, to see as an object, as something dirty, as something horrific, as something to be fearful to and for. We are starting to treat this home planet as something that we need to get rid of. And this is something you need to question. We need to see what we are doing here. All right. I am personally against vaccinations, me too, including flu shots, because I understand that many of the various vaccines not only contain poison, but also contain nanobots, extremely small artificial particles the size of blood cells. And another thing we should question is, why is it still necessary to have vaccinations? Well, the answer is this. Look at your own computer. The software needs being updated. So that is why that they are demanding and trying to make a worldwide mandate for the vaccine program. Yeah, so that they have the opportunity to update the nanobots and other techno crap that is being inhaled by us and is added to the food and medical pharmacia industry. Um, so these nanobots, they need to be upgraded. This is also the main reason why they are already selling us crops and thus vegetables that contain viruses. We need to be sick all the time. Yeah, the overlords, are creating a program to keep us 24/7 sick. They create all sorts of viruses in laboratories and spread them through the so-called chemtrailing in the air. We inhale these, and all of a sudden there is a so-called pandemic. Is that so called? Is that so all of a sudden? No, of course not, because what happens if they know the percentage, and then when the percentage is there that enough humans are contaminated, what do? They activate something in us through the satellites. And so all of a sudden, many people at the same time get sick. And then they have a reason to roll out a new vaccine. This is how it works. And nanobots are also in all the prescription drugs. So the entire pharmaceutical industry is also completely overtaken and is adding technologies to medicine. Once inserted, the nanobots will forever run through our bloodstream. Yes, you read that correctly. There is allegedly no way to remove these particles once they are there. Thus, Big Brother has most of us covered already, yes, through the food industry, through the fact that we inhale this crap 24/7 a day, and also through all the products, because there is an expansion of products, an increase of products with nano in it. Nano silver, nano gold, nano whatever. There's an increase of these products on the market. Don't take them, I would say. Don't make it worse than it already is. But just to make sure nothing is left to chance, nanobots have supposedly also been put in chemtrails, which means that most people around the globe are breathing them in. And not only people, also the insects, also your pets, your cats, your dogs, your birds, all the wildlife. Each and every animal is breathing this in too. These nanobots work as antennas that can receive commands remotely, are self-replicating, and will be used both to transmit and receive information, something we will discuss later. And if you see, there is an increase of people wearing glasses. It becomes more and more and more. However, the purpose is to have nanobots replacing our immune system. So now you know why they are trying to make a mandate for vaccinating babies so that their natural immune system can be overtaken completely by nanobots. This means that then your baby comes into the process of becoming a cyborg, eventually human being. All right. However, the purpose is to have nanobots replacing our immune system and to reverse aging. Interestingly, Bill Gates is advocating for vaccines and healthcare in an effort to reduce the population. These are his own words, and they sound like a contradiction, perhaps, but not in Gates' his world. The first 2 years of a child's life, he or she gets more than 20 vaccinations. Ridiculous. This is outrageous, and even if the vaccines would not contain any harmful products, which unfortunately they do, they would still bypass and deplete the child's immune system, making him or her more prone to serious illnesses. There is an increase of young people from underneath 23 years old that are coming into dementia. There are young people from one moment into another moment that they become completely uh, into dementia. This should make concerns to everyone. There's an increase of young people dying on young age of cancer. The immune system in many cases then would continue being depleted throughout adulthood, particularly when we as adults get even more vaccinations. We build our immune system in early childhood, and if we have that process tempered with, the immune system in adulthood will not be fully developed. Exactly. And there are already enough proofs from parents that say and have chosen deliberately to not participate in this cruelty, and their children are far more healthier than those who have been vaccinated. And there is much evidence that we do not need vaccinations at all. Um, and yeah, then I go to another topic that is called the breakdown of the family unit, which of course is also on purpose done, as everything in this world is on purpose done. The breakdown of the family unit. The family unit has been a threat to the cosmic outlaws for centuries because it creates a strong bond between people. In the Middle Ages, the family unit was kept under control by having people live in poverty, filth, and starvation. This is still going on, so nothing has changed. While the rich were wallowing in money, luxury, and delicious food. Also, this has not changed. Better said, the entire Western world is being set back into poverty, filth, and starvation again. So the entire Western world shall become and turn into a third um, world. Families stuck together but had little time to do anything except trying to cope with a situation where they lived from day to day struggling to survive. So, with the so-called Industrial Revolution and the new technological era, things changed. Regular people eventually received higher education, so-called education. Um, in order to be able to understand and work with technology and the society that emerged from it. Also, the living standard slowly increased in the Western world and real poverty became rarer. The backside of this, viewed from the outlaw's perspective, was that the family unit also became stronger and healthier. Well, and that is exactly what the overlords do not want, of course. People had more time to talk about things of concern, and it became harder for the manipulators to control families. So then you need to make a plan. The controllers had no idea what was happening behind locked doors. Consequently, something had to be done. One of the most brilliant ideas was to introduce television. The goal became one TV in every home. So this was the fourth of many future steps to seduce the population with nonsense, so that they, instead of sitting around the table discussing subjects that could challenge the status quo, would be distracted and separated by watching TV. So the first step to distract people was silent movies. The second step was radio, and the third step was movies that included audio. As a result, people who did not go to the theater or listen to the radio could bring the theater into their own homes by distracting people, often with nonsense programs such as dubious Western movies that distorted the actual history of the Wild West, TV series, subtle propaganda films, and biased and controlled news programs. They could more easily dumb down both the individual and the entire family unit. This worked like a charm for many years and still does to an extent. But the AIF, the alien slash archontic invader force, still felt threatened. Therefore, they wanted to create an experiment to see how solid their manipulation and mind control of the masses really was. Hence, they created the counterculture movement, which originated at the Tavistock Institute in the United Kingdom. The Vietnam War had started, and now the controllers and their minions and proxies thought it might be a good idea to target the children. Hence, they created the hippie movement. It all started with Elvis Presley, who was succeeded by the Beatles and later on the Rolling Stones, upon whom a large number of other pop and rock groups, as well as individual singers and songwriters, followed. The entire music industry is in actuality in the hands of the CIA. And many singers in actuality were part of MK Ultra programming. The entire purpose with pop and rock music was and still is to manipulate the children, the teenagers. Part of the agenda in the 1960s was to alienate the children from their families by indoctrinating them and introducing them to drugs. This has been done through this famous Woodstock event, and other huge rock concerts had one major purpose: to drug down the hippie generation. At Woodstock, drugs were used openly and the police were instructed not to intervene. What a stunningly great number of the musicians of the hippie generation had in common was that they were children of high-ranking military families. Many of these young musicians had been subjected to trauma-based mind control and had developed multiple personalities. Jim Morrison of The Doors is just one of many, many, many examples. Charles Manson, another mind-controlled puppet, together with his equally mind-controlled gang of fanatic murderers, put a nail in the coffin of the hippie movement, and from then on society became more violent and unstable. While heavy metal bands such as Alice Cooper and Black Forerunners and Black Sabbath, with their tuned down guitar music, being examples of forerunners of music groups who are spreading music with dark and often violent messages. These new so-called new bands now became the role models for a new generation. Alice Cooper, his real name is Vincent Fernier, said in an interview that he and his band were those who actually put the final nail in the coffin of the hippie movement. Most hippies were now in their late 20s or early 30s, and some of them succumbed to drugs while others cut their hair, married, and got a job. The Tavistock slash Woodstock experiment had been successful, and the previous stability of the family unit began to show some serious instability. After having lost almost an entire generation to war, rock music, drugs, and promiscuous sex, nonetheless, something more had to be done to once and for all break families apart. And thus they came with the feministic movement. But the feministic movement was in actuality already being mentioned in Karl Marx, his manifesto. This manifesto is also the basis for the Fabian Society. And the Fabian Society has as logo a sheep in wolf, a wolf in sheep clothing. That is their logo. So the Rockefeller Foundation was put in charge to accomplish the complete breakdown of the family unit. So now you can see that there is a script being rolled out for a far too long time over this world. Nothing, completely nothing is being done at random. Nothing. Every single thing is carefully thought about, crafted, and instigated. They came up with a brilliant solution that also looked humane and fair on the surface. But its real purpose was to split the, in the opinion of the overlords, between quotation marks, dangerous family unit, and to more or less pull it up by its roots. The Rockefellers instigated and sponsored the women's liberation movement, which was another branch of the feministic movement and agenda. So in the early 1970s, they planted some mind-controlled, charismatic women on the stage, and these puppets were proponents for women to have equal rights to men. This, of course, was a new concept in this male-dominant world and could have been a good thing if it wasn't for the real purpose behind the movement. The idea was that women should have an equal right to full-time jobs as men and to have equal opportunities to advance within the societal structure. Well, what in actuality was going on is more things at the same time, because if all women would also go into job, yeah, that was more taxation. So here we get more things at once. This agenda was a success. Women entered the job market in much larger numbers than even before. And they now had their own careers to think about. Then, of course, they also wanted to marry and have children. This became a problem to a certain degree, because how would they be able to combine their careers with raising children? Well, the answer was very simple. Let's go for the daycare. Let's invent daycare. These daycare centers took care of and raised the children while both their parents were busy working long hours. Also, society now had the opportunity to indoctrinate the children at an early age by taking charge of their early so called education. Better said, indoctrination. Now, finally, the family unit was split up. The societal structure the Rockefeller Foundation created and sponsored has now become the norm. Before women's liberation, parents usually raised children who were happy and who, because their childhood was peaceful, had a stable ground on which they could go out and face the world as young adults. This was entirely based on the father who could support his entire family with his income, while the mother could be a stay at home mother, taking care of the children and working around the house. This is the best environment for children to grow up in. This because Better said, this became next to impossible after the breakdown of the family unit. Suddenly, the father, in general, couldn't financially support his family anymore. When inflation made commodities much more expensive and income did not increase to match this upsurge in costs. Hence, regardless whether the mother wanted to work or not, she was forced to in order to be able to contribute to the overall finances of the family. In summary, the administrators and the overlords and their minions and proxies here on earth do not want us to unify on a spiritual level by our own means, a process that otherwise happens quite automatically when two or more people are able to connect on a deeper level, such as within solid and stable families. Since time immemorial, the outlaws have worked hard to keep us separated from each other on a spiritual level. Today, it is worse than ever. Both parents work. The children are brought up by strangers when what they actually need are their real parents who can give them solid guidelines on how to behave as children and how to best succeed as adults. Instead, the children are being purposefully indoctrinated by society from a very early age. Then, when the real parents pick up their children from daycare after work, they are usually so exhausted after a stressful workday that they have little energy left to take care of their children's needs. What this creates are unstable children with anxiety, depressions, and low self esteem, just to name a few. When these children grow up, they are easily further manipulated by society and they often become obedient workers for the system. Well, this is exactly what the overlords want. It is utterly important to have a stable and loving childhood to fall back upon when challenges in life are getting the best of us. Note also that I do not imply that women should be exempted from having a career if they want to, but I think the setup of the original family unit is the ideal. Moreover, I think it is important that, sorry, my cat is doing shittiness. I think it is more important that a couple contemplate this important issue with the above in mind before they dedicate themselves mindlessly to a very stressful job market, leaving the main responsibility of childcare to others who have no connection to the family. I know it is hard to manage on one person's wages these days, but we do not need fancy houses, expensive cars, and increasing credit card debts in order to have a good life. Less can sometimes be sufficient to survive and maintain a healthy work and life balance. It is important for the overlords to program us from our early childhood because that will format our way of thinking later in life. Instead, if sound and intuitive parents educate their children from the beginning by giving them their love and their time, great moral and ethical values, and teach them how to survive on their own, but also teach them how to problem solve, to help out at home in order for them to learn how to function in a family and have them learn different skills based on the parents' experience and common sense. The children will become much more stable adults. They will also be capable of critical thinking rather than being subjected to the indoctrination given in daycare centers and elsewhere. All right. Which only creates obedient slaves. Of course, there is always a chance that the parents are flawed and will teach their children destructive behaviors that they are passing forward from their parents, or they might abuse their children in different ways. But in general, the old way of raising children creates more capable and compassionate individuals. Separation makes people unhappy. We are a social species, and the controllers know this. Of course, it is imperative for the controllers to separate us in order to unite us. The unification that the controllers want is a unification through technology. And here comes the whole cloud system in play. They want to have us in one cloud. That is their definition of unification. And through this cloud, we, better said, the human soul group, is then also becoming a hive mind. And through this hive mind, they can control us because then you only have to control one, and the rest will do exactly as the first one is doing. Yeah. So this is the so-called unification of this world. It's nothing more than unifying the human soul through technology into a cloud system. And to make that happen, they must make humanity feel that it is in need of change. If a need for change is not created, no one wants to change. Having a sound family unit in place, few people would like the changes proposed by those in charge. However, after having separated us from each other and made us overstressed and unhappy, we are crying out for a change that offers protection, false protection, so to say, and false guidance. It is the controller's formula all over again. Problem dash reaction dash solution. Transhumanism is a way to further tighten the ropes around our necks, while presenting it as something so-called positive by pointing out key things that are desirable to people, such as immortality, but the immortality that they want to make us believe is a false immortality because it's through technology. All right. Because most people are afraid to die. They are afraid of the unknown and they do not want to leave their loved ones behind. With the singularity in place, that won't happen, or deaths will at least be very rare and far between. People get what they want between quotation marks a unity, which is a false unity. And the overlords get what they want, synthetic, artificial unity, created with and through technology. Then the new trap closes around people who are turning into immortal cyborgs from the inside out, who cannot escape. They are stuck with rejuvenating artificial bodies that never die or deteriorate because everything in their bodies can be replaced and eventually be self-healing. It is just a matter of reorganizing the manufactured cells slash nanobots in the body, and new limbs and organs can easily heal, or rather self-rejuvenate. People will be stuck for an eternity in cyborg bodies, in service to and as part of Lucifer's legions. If this is not threatening to us, I do not know what is. It is the same as the definition of nightmare or hell. Fortunately, there is a, between quotation marks, solution, which I will come to later. And with this said, I have come to the end of reading several topics from this book, Synthetic Superintelligence and the Transmutation of Humankind, written by Wes Penry. I would highly recommend you to go to the websites mentioned in the text box below the video. Um, you can download a PDF from this book for free. So if you do not like to buy it, you can download this book for free through a PDF format. So please do so and start reading it yourself, or you can buy the book so that you have a paper version. And I think that is far more better. And I would highly recommend you to inform yourselves and to educate yourselves about the ongoing techno agendas. And I also want to say to you, please um, ponder upon the fact that everything in this world is deliberately created with just one goal, and that goal is the erasure of human life, of life itself, because animals also are being erased because of the fact that they also are breathing in nanobots, so they become cyborg beings too. Um, and the same for trees. I know already that they are creating artificial trees. So each tree that is being chopped down will be replaced with an artificial tree that looks from the outside a tree, but is not. This is an artificial tree that also has the ability to spy on us. These trees are easily to be chopped and to be used for all sorts of products. um, we need to question every single thing that is happening in this world. And far more important, you need to realize this question: do you want to become part of this singularity, this machine kingdom? If not, then go in communion with your spirit and ask your spirit what you can do to change your life in such a way that you become lesser and lesser attached to this machine kingdom techno agendas. Your spirit knows how to guide you in a way that you can move yourselves out of this for a great degree. Do this. If you do not want to be part of this machine kingdom that is being terraformed here on earth in a rapid pace, then go in communion with your spirit. And you even can go into communion with your divine soul fire itself. Please do so, and inform yourselves and educate yourselves about all this. All right. The next time I will continue with the random topics that I have chosen from this book to present to you, so you will get a more in-depth understanding of the techno agendas that are being rolled out. All right. I want to thank you so much for tuning in, for listening along. Thank you for tuning in through Facebook, Rumble, and YouTube. Thank you for spending your time for listening and listening to all this information. I wish you all a beautiful, joyful day filled with a lot of wisdom, truth, and knowledge, all coming from your own spirit. And we will close off with a beautiful short song, which is called Hope. I see you